Earlier in the year, I covered a Tubi original called Baby Cat, which left me, quite honestly, lost for words, despite it turning out to be the longest solo review I've ever uploaded to the channel. But back when I was looking into films to cover in the last season, I believe sometime around February of 2025, paired up with Baby Cat was another cat-related film that, well, it made me take a pause for thought. Ladies, you may want to cross your legs for the duration of this one because it ain't gonna be fun. 2020 or 2021's Kitty Mamas, I don't solidly know when this film came out as the copyright notice claims 2021, but every website I've visited talks about the film saying that it was out in 2020, so who knows, is a mockumentary in the vein of films like Best in Show and The Independent, with a plot that, well, I'm not squeamish, but even I winced when I heard about this one. So the plot is thus. Somewhere in Canada, a recently disgraced doctor called Dr. William Hahn has been thrown something of a lifeline. Dr. Hahn was previously a reproductive endocrinologist, basically a doctor who specialises in reproductive health issues. But after a claim of sexual assault, which he sincerely denies, he lost his licence to practice and has been forced to seek funding from unusual sources in order to try and win his merit back. And he's come up with a theory that he wants to experiment with that, well, let me explain. Dr. Hahn has noticed that people love their pets. They care about them and treat them like family, like their own children. And he's hit on the idea that some pet owners, specifically cat owners, would feel an even closer bond to their pets if they birthed them themselves. So he's decided to run a trial to check the viability of carrying a cat fetus in a human womb right through from implantation to birth. Natural birth. The trial is simple. Dr. Hahn has genetically modified 4 cat fetuses to increase their odds of surviving within a human womb. He's also imbued them with an anti-allergen that makes them effectively hypoallergenic to avoid their dander causing any issues for the host carrying the fetus. 4 test subjects will be implanted with the kittens, and once they've been carried to term and successfully delivered, the women involved will each receive $20,000 and, assuming the cats get a clean bill of health from an on-site vet and passes any medical testing Dr. Hahn wants to complete, the ladies will be able to keep the kittens as their own. How did Dr. Hahn get the money together to run this interesting experiment? Well, the medical board that stripped him of his licence gave him part of the funding and restored his licence temporarily pending the results of his trial, and the other half has come courtesy of FTV, Feline Television, a cat-centric cable network that's agreed to cover the remaining outstanding funding in exchange for the network having exclusive rights to film the trial, which will be presented as a documentary after the trial has been completed. And, in fact, it's heavily emphasised that what we're watching is in fact that completed documentary from FTV on this. The ladies are made to sign NDAs banning them from telling anyone about their pregnancies during the trial, which will last for 90 days. The only exceptions will be other people who are involved in the trial or any family members that have also agreed to sign an NDA. And just before the trial kicks off, Dr. Hahn assures the ladies that their figures won't change noticeably during this time, as one cat fetus weighs less than 100 grams and is no larger than a bar of soap. It's at this point that we're introduced to our ladies who will be undergoing the trial, and each of them has a distinct personality type and personal issue that'll act as this film's subplot mechanism. There's Sylvia, a 42-year-old web designer who's agreed to do the trial because she has kids already but she wants a cat too, and her husband is very allergic to cats, and she thinks that given the cat will technically be from her own body and that it'll be entirely hypoallergenic, that her husband Tom won't have a leg to stand on in telling her no. She's also decided not to tell Tom that she's doing the trial, with the documentary film crew agreeing to pretend to shoot a documentary about work-home-life balance featuring the pair instead. Next up is Joan, a 22-year-old undergrad student who is solely doing the trial because she wants the money to help pay her way through law school. Joan had a famous father who sadly passed away 4 years ago due to bone cancer, and Joan's mum inherited his entire fortune. The problem? Joan's mum is a hippie, arty weirdo who can't accept that her daughter would want to throw her life away studying law when she could be expressing herself through the various mediums of art. So much so that she refuses to share Joan's father's wealth with her, and she refuses to co-sign for any loan agreements with Joan unless she agrees to join her in attempting multiple art courses to entirely rule out an artistic streak. Something Joan is very upset about. Then there's Maria, a 28-year-old carpenter who's doing this in part for the kitten, because she really quite likes cats, and also for the money because she can use it to help part fund her wedding to her partner Jennifer. Her problem? Her very heavily religious mother, who, first off, is only just tolerant of a relationship with Jennifer, and secondly is desperately trying to get Maria to have an actual baby because she wants grandkids. To the point that she, on more than one occasion, has tried to set her up with a sperm donor from her local church. And thirdly, she'd be absolutely dead set against her birthing a kitten. Cue comedy hilarity as they try to hide the cat pregnancy and shun the sperm donors, while her mother becomes increasingly problematic and hurtful to both Maria and Jennifer. And, rounding out the group, we have Rose, a vlogger and self-proclaimed crazy cat lady. And there's no real way to get around this. She's fucking insane. She runs a cat vlogging channel where she fawns over her 5-year-old cat Mr. Poof. Her house is entirely cat decorated, she dresses in cat-based clothing and does cat-based things sometimes, but it's deeper than that. She sees Mr. Poof as her family, and, well, she wants to knit the family closer together. She's taken some of Mr. Poof's material, and that's being used as the base to impregnate all of these women, including herself. And believe me, she's weird about it. I mean, women giving birth to cats is a bridge too far for me personally, but getting impregnated with your own cat's kittens and really emphasising that you're starting a family with your cat is... well, the CSPCA should be on standby is all I'm saying. She doesn't really have any problems to deal with, she's enough of a problem on her own. So, the trial begins. The women are all implanted and the film essentially just follows them through their day-to-day routine for 90 days, as we chart their ups and downs, the side effects of cat-based pregnancy and periodic check-ins with Dr. Han to make sure everything's ticking over as planned. But there is one more thing. Dr. Han has a bit of a stalker in the form of a small-time press writer, Daryl. Daryl is the journalist who got Dr. Han's license taken off of him after he reported that his wife, Teresa, had been sexually assaulted by Han. But Teresa tells a very different story, and has long since divorced Daryl. Daryl catches wind that Han has a new trial winding up and is desperate to find out what it is, so that he can spin it as quackery to get the doctor's license revoked permanently. Only, this time around, Han is gonna have some help, in the form of Teresa, who steps in as Han's vet technician after the original one leaves over the ethics of GMO. And Pauline, a no-nonsense, dry-humoured, cash-first, service-second nurse, who puts Daryl in his place and holds the door for Han while he runs the trial, with feelings blossoming slowly between Han and Teresa to boot. In a somewhat gentle 93 minutes of going ah periodically, will Dr. Han get his license back? Will Daryl deal the dirt? And I'm so sorry, claws and sensitive tissue really shouldn't mix. It's haunting my mind's eye. Please, someone sedate me. Please. Meow meow and meow will be meow if meow 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 kitty mamas. Now, given this is in the same weight category as a Tubi original, and given my past experience with Tubi originals, I think I could be forgiven for thinking that, based off of the synopsis alone, this was going to be a white-knuckle ride of fetish exploration and bestiality being given the thumbs up because it has a quirky slice-of-life side to it. Honestly, I was preparing for the worst, but the reality is, this thing actually wasn't half bad. It's flawed. Absolutely it's flawed, but given what could have been, I'm honestly just kinda grateful the film pivots the way it does. The script itself is actually pretty nicely put together. A mockumentary lives and dies by its humour, and we have here a pretty inoffensive blend of ultra-dry comedy, cringe comedy, and that kind of upbeat, bubbly humour you get on light entertainment US sitcoms. It's a very safe film in that regard. It isn't doing anything that would raise eyebrows, mercifully, and I found it largely gentle and watchable. I smirked a couple of times, I laughed once or twice. It's fine. Border good, even. It had a free pass to go dark, weird and kinky with the humour, and it would have generated a lot of attention easily had it done that. But it chose the high ground. And I kinda respect that, as it makes the writing process a bit harder as a result. Offering a distinct contrast to the comedy as well, we have some very solid moments of pathos. And it's again, quite good quality pathos for a film like this, if not a tad predictable. It plays the comedy and darker tones off of each other quite well for most of the runtime, giving the audience the chance to avoid flavour fatigue. However, there are moments, particularly in the third act, where that dark or unsettling countertone gets a little too dark, bleak or unsettling. Very much to the film's detriment. Contrast is one thing, but the film gets quite verbally graphic at times, covering triggering topics, and the birthing scenes just left me feeling very uncomfortable, honestly. I'd say like 70 to 80% of the time they get the tone about right for a solid mockumentary piece. Humour's subjective and don't expect any gut laughs, but I think it meets the brief fine enough. But those 20 to 30% moments where it overreaches into something a bit icky, it takes a while to come back from that. The pacing is on the gentle side, which is a bit of a shame. It plods for the majority of the runtime, and that's kind of a good thing and a bad thing, because on the one hand, at least it's consistent and at least it's not uneven on structuring or warbling too much, but then on the other hand, it's basically stuck in one gear for the whole runtime. So if you aren't happy with the pacing by the 20-minute mark, this is going to be a painful rodeo for you because it doesn't get any faster. I think the film's biggest issue, simply put, is why? How did this plot come to be? The main mechanism of the film is a woman birthing kittens, and I'm going to be honest here, I've seen films about women who kill when they're hungry, films about killer vaginas, films about pet play, and films set in bizarre alternate realities that are powered by vibes, and I still can't quite get my head around the reason this film's core plot exists being solely that, hey, some women treat pets like their kids, let's literally have them birth their pet to create a bond. I don't understand the core mechanism. I don't know what medical board would finance this trial, what woman would sign up for it, let alone willingly. Hell, even if they passed the trial by some miracle, why would anyone pay the no doubt obscene medical fees to have this operation performed, when you can usually get kittens for $50 or less from a shelter or alleyway if you're lucky enough? If the only answer the film has is, because why not, then that's fine. But that's a very shallow answer for something. And I don't feel like it does the film any favours, honestly. I don't know, maybe I'm missing some elevated metaphors in this one, but it just kind of felt like the writers saw someone describe themselves as a kitty mama, or their cat as a kitty baby, and decided to take it to a somewhat illogically logical conclusion. As the credits rolled on this one, I didn't feel like I'd wasted my time, but I did kind of shrug the film off and think, well, who is this really for, honestly? Because I think the literalism of it all is really going to put the actual kitty mums and dads off watching. It's not weird enough to snag the cult or weird cinema crowd, really. It's too weird and plodding for normies, too dark and sweary in places to be a surreal family film. In that sense, it feels like a passion project, something someone had wanted to make for a while and wasn't really keen on compromising a vision on. Which, again, is fine, but to me, the end result is a film that just kind of left me feeling like I should clear my internet history just to be safe. Outside of that, however, the characters are all decently well written. They have well-rounded characters, barring Rose, who is seemingly only really written in as a MacGuffin to help connecting up getting the trial started and to connect the trial to an internet audience in waiting, ready for the third act. There's complexity, their stories occasionally overlap, which I thought was quite nice, and I liked that they almost made this thing an anthology film, giving each of the leads their own story and their own character progressions, and while I will say it's quite heavy-handed on its messaging, with a second act all is lost trope basically landing like a whale in training gear, seriously throwing the tone of the piece for about 10 minutes with relentless dark and sad moments before quickly course-correcting, it did make me care about these characters' stories and how they shaped out. The dialogue, for the most part, is naturalistic and solid. I say that because there is the odd occasion where it creeps into cringy territory, in part because of the humour, but in part because this film's trying to be schmaltzy about the miracle of birth at times, and I don't quite feel like it nails the landing on occasion, sounding less like a profound piece delivered in timely pace, and more like an 80s Hallmark greetings card that's been given a sickly sweet facelift. That being said though, while this script does have its faults, I ultimately kinda got on with it fine enough. Like I say, it doesn't really do anything new, and it feels a little threadbare and heavy-handed in places, but by the end I just couldn't be mad at this one. It tried, and it clearly showed it was trying, and that's all I can really ask out of a film, honestly. The script was written and directed by Dennis Alexander Nicholson, and was co-written by Katrina Nicholson. Dennis has 9 writing credits and 11 directing credits, and he's directed everything that he's written. His career runs from 2012 through to 2021, and he mainly seems to have worked in short films, of which he's been quite successful seemingly, having won several awards for them. Kitty Mamas is seemingly his first crack at a feature-length film. Essentially, he's new to the medium, but not new to the art. From the looks of things, he's really more of a sound guy, as he has 92 credits in that field ranging from 2018 to 2024. And as for Katrina, she has 3 writing credits, all of them co-writer credits for films Dennis worked on, and Kitty Mamas is her last credit to date. And from here on in, things kinda get very safe, honestly. The direction is fine. Relatively solid even. The end product is a decent enough low-budget offering, and it's clear that Dennis worked closely with the trained crew to produce something that, well, it won't exactly set the world of style on fire, but it's competent for the most part. It's clear Dennis had the mockumentary aesthetic in mind, particularly the works of Christopher Guest, and the end results just kind of feel like that. A not quite as good as Chris Guest attempt at doing Chris Guest. It isn't taking many risks, there are a few nice moments in there at times, but for the most part, it just feels a bit overly safe and fairly grounded. There was nothing horrendous I could pick out, nor was there anything remarkable. It's just kind of competent. Same goes for direction of the cast, honestly. Dennis seemingly worked with the cast to help get the type of vibe and performance out of them that he wanted, and I'd say about 90% of the time he succeeded. The cast are encouraged to use props and to go a bit above a traditional performance, just sitting on the cusp of campy without spoiling the illusion of it being a mockumentary. And they do a fine job. It matches the direction and scripting required fairly seamlessly. Again, no notes really. In a way, I'm kind of knocked that it's a bit beige, honestly, but given the budget and scope, I can't help but be impressed that they managed to do an okay job given what some filmmakers turn out on a significantly higher budget than this. The Cine is probably a little stale, if I'm being completely honest. 2 things seriously hinder it in my opinion: a lack of consistent B-roll, which causes a lot of the scenes to run unbroken for a bit too long. It made me a bit restless because the variety just wasn't there for me. I can only assume it was a time thing, because for some scenes they do get pretty decent coverage, but there are a lot of scenes where things start to drag visually just because there isn't really anything to cut to in the meantime. And the other thing is just the total lack of risk-taking here. Everything is so safe. There's no real attempt at any kind of lighting stylizations. Shot setups are 99% tripod locked off shots, maybe including the occasional pan, but that's it. A lot of the location and establishing shots are stock footage, which really limits any kind of attempt to bring the world to life a bit. Any sets or location work kind of felt a bit minimalist and unintentional in its design. Barring Rose's vlogger den, all the locations or sets kind of just looked like the crew turned up, maybe put a couple of personal effects of the character in the background, and then just started filming. It's all shot very flat, with minimal colour play or experimentation, and documentary and mockumentary can kinda get away with that a bit better than other genres, but even with that being the case, it's underwhelming. Like I say, for the most part, what's here is fine, but the combination of those two issues really hobbled this film for me and kind of stopped it getting to the next level. Add to this that the edit is also a little on the loosey-goosey side. Again, not to a terrible degree, but just... it feels like some scenes could have done with one more pass-through. Some sequences shortened just a little bit or removed entirely. It's a little inconsistent, mainly in how it presents its information to the audience. Like, it'll show Dr. Han talking about one of the ladies for a bit, and then it'll cut to a completely different lady entirely for a bit, then back to Dr. Han who'll change the subject to something else, and then it will cut to the lady he was initially talking about doing whatever Dr. Han was talking about in the first clip. It feels like there was a bit of a difficulty in deciding the running order of sequences within the scenes, which is kind of a difficult thing to remedy, honestly, but here it just makes things feel a bit rough. Performance-wise, there's some really great turns in here. Easily my favourite performance in this whole thing, and probably the best reason to check this movie out in my opinion, is Stephanie Belding's performance as the assistant nurse Pauline. She plays the character very dry, very sarcastic, great level of snark, and she brings a nice low-energy turn to the performance, which is exactly what's needed to play against the other high-energy cast members. She gets some of the best lines in this, some of the best moments, and she doesn't miss a beat with great comedic timing. I thought she did brilliantly. Vienna Hare and Catherine Coat are both rock solid as Joan and Maria. Getting more emotional subplots, they have a good range to work with across the plot. They seize the scenes and relish each turn, giving a great naturalistic performance here that never feels like overkill, and the physical performances and body language throughout are superb in helping the audience understand their positions without having to say a word. I did struggle a bit with Moran Cohen's performance as Rose here. She's been given a nerdy YouTuber type persona to play, and maybe I'm a bit too close to the subject here, but the character just came across as cringy and as written by someone who understands social media from about 10 years before this film was made. Even so, she really goes all out, throwing herself physically into the role, having the lion's share of the more animate and heavy physical segments. Her dialogue isn't the best in the world, but even so she tries to make it come to life as best she can, and I think I'd say she wins here more than she loses. In fact, it's only really Paul Sun-Hyung Lee who I feel is a bit of an odd duck here. He plays Dr. Han, and it's not so much that he gives a bad performance, he's actually pretty consistent and gives a good emotive range, it's really more that I just feel like it's a bit of a miscast here. I see what they were trying to do in casting him, given most of Dr. Han's plot revolves around a strained relationship with Teresa and the subplot around the alleged sexual assault incident. They want to portray the character as a pleasant but mild-mannered type to help assure audiences of his character. But given what the Doctor is proposing, I just feel like the role needed a bit more energy behind it, maybe just a little bit more eccentricity. Just something to give the character a bit more flavour. Paul works with what he's given here fine enough, but I don't know if it was his choice to play the character as mild as he did, or the directors say, but in either case, the end result is just kind of an unremarkable performance that feels a bit underplayed to me. The supporting cast here are all fine enough too, they do a solid job, there's no noticeable or poor performances. The energy is there are a couple of wobbles, but nothing I can specifically call out. All round, the performances here are really just pretty decent, especially given the budget and scope of the production. And finally, the soundtrack, or lack thereof. Given the genre of filmmaking present here, the soundtrack playlist is very minimal. I could only recall maybe 4 to 6 tracks tops running across the whole runtime. The film utilises diegetic sound for the most part and Atmos tracks to really help add to the comedy or drama going on within the scene. Music creeps in sparingly here, it's mostly stock music tracks, but they're used only in key scenes and to fairly great effect, I'd say. It's a bit on the Hallmark side at times, but again, it does what it needs to do as and when it needs to do it, and then it gets back on with the show, and I can't really knock it for that. It's, once again, just a quite well utilised piece of work. I'm going to go out on a limb here, but my guess is that Kitty Mamas had a very limited touring theatrical release in 2020 before landing on Blu-ray and streaming in January of 2021. Yes, if Amazon is to be believed, this film has a physical release. I'm guessing it's an MOD disc, as the distributor is the same company that released the film Gravitas Venturis. No extras that I can see, it looks like just the film on a disc, which is fine enough. On the streaming front, I believe it initially started out on Vimeo On Demand, which was where I first saw it, before making its way to Tubi. It's available on there in US territories, and you know what? If you've got a couple of hours free in an afternoon, I'd say it's worth bookmarking this one. Kitty Mamas was a bit of a surprise to me, honestly. I went in with expectations on the floor, just hoping I wasn't going to be suffering deep hurting before the first act closed. But having actually seen it now, I'd say it blew clean past my expectations. It's an imperfect, weird, and at times oddly bleak picture, but one that does feel like it had a lot of heart, care, and attention poured into it. Its only crime is being just kind of sturdy rather than great. Something that really does the film no favours, and I'd have honestly preferred it way more had it just taken a couple more gambles on the visuals and storytelling. As it stands, do I think this is worth your time? Well, maybe. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you're bored one evening and you remember this film exists, give it a spin. You'll probably have an okay time with it, but I wouldn't actively hunt this film down unless it's easily available. It's good enough to catch casually, not good enough to bother with the time it'd take to hunt it down otherwise.